let's kick it off.
Oh, right. I didn't actually come up with a way to segue into that. I've been having, so many trouble with getting any lately. I've been having so many girl problems. It's a bit,
Where are you going with this?
Well, Nord, if you're having girl problems, I feel bad for you, son. I got 99 episodes of the Strip Poker Night at the Inventory podcast, and nmasp is in this one.
That was pretty slick. A+.
I'm spnanon, by the way, the regular host. And this is episode 99, and I'm here with my co-host, Nord, who kicked things off, and a very special returning guest. Sometimes I say returning host by accident, but in this case, I really mean it. Because it's Kexty, a.k.a. nmasp, a.k.a. No More Atheism Spam Please. He's back. He said he was leaving. He lied. We pulled him back. We didn't. He just came back of his own accord because he just wants to jerk off to some cartoon characters more. Nord, say hi, and then nmasp. Say hi. Nord, say hi first.
Hello. Remember, you can check out at any time, but you can never leave. Part of the ship, part of the crew. It always comes back to SPNatI.
All right. Well, hey, good to be back on the cast. After yet another aborted retirement attempt, here we are again. So good to be on the cast.
Would you prefer to be the Brett Favre of SPNatI or the Michael Jordan of SPNatI?
I'm probably the Michael Jordan. Let's be real. Oh, God damn it. I know something.
You have a successful business.
I think you're the Jim Carrey. You say that you're quitting, but you'll come back for a really good script. Or in this case, a really good character.
Like the Sonic movies.
A really good script. Like you saw 16 seconds in a trailer of some small Asian girl in a bodysuit.
Oh God, I cannot wait to talk about this character. No, but so
I decided that's enough for me. I'm gonna get to work.
It's hey, I'm a simple man.
Yeah, this we did not invite nmasp back for charity. Okay, hell hath no fury, like a spnanon scorned. But he did actually make some shit for this game again.
I know, shocking.
And he will be treated like a guest. That means he has to go first.
All right, well,
shouldn't be a big problem. He always played good cop. He's also interrupting me as usual. It's all coming back to
I know.
me.
Nothing. What is old is new again, and what is new is old again.
I'm just sitting here relaxing in my hot tub with a host on either arm, a co-host. So yeah.
Imagine if you had gotten invested in Concord instead. Imagine the hilarity of that.
I know.
I mean, we gotta keep things moving in here a little bit. But last episode was actually the live cast where we announced that nmasp was coming back for the next 2 episodes. That went pretty long. It was pretty successful, I'd say. Not too personal questions overall, but very interesting discussion we had. And like I said, it was quite lengthy. Where was I going with this? Shit. Left my mind just for a second. But
so for those of you who don't know me or don't remember me, which is or have tried to forget me, nmasp, long time contributor to SPNatI. I'm on the podcast today to talk about Juno and Constance. Previous kind of relevant things I've done are Marinette, Adrian, Leon, Sucrose. And we'll also talk a little about Futaba later today, which is pretty exciting. So it's good to be on the cast, good to be back, and looking forward to talking about waifus.
Now I remember. It's because I encouraged people to directly compare Nord and nmasp's performance as co-hosts, but I guess they can just do it directly now. I can see how we contrast. He's a little more laid back compared to nmasp's upbeat energy. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Nord, and as well as like the live cast in general? Also, nmasp, I know you were there for a lot of the live cast, but Nord, how did you think it went?
I think it went pretty good, although people were surprisingly tame about asking really invasive personal questions that I had specifically requested. So we got all of the, wholesome ones like, who's one of your favorite characters? What's your favorite thing about developing for the game? Ask me about my many medical conditions sometime.
I think it helps to prime people for that. Be like, yo, I don't talk about this enough. This is your chance to ask. Please ask. Please clap.
See, the thing with that is, like, I've done that a lot of AMAs, and I do suggest that, mostly because I want to go on unhinged political rants. But at the end of the day, I have to remember People don't actually know a whole lot about me, despite having been here for like 6.5 years.
nmasp, tell me why you're afraid of roads. spnanon, tell me why you love roads. Nor do they have roads in the socialist hellscape that is the United Kingdom broadly. Good questions. Good questions.
Speaking of roads, we should maybe move on to the host Shilling corner. Both of these other two have plenty to talk about in regards to themselves, so I don't expect this to be long. Me, meanwhile, am not featured on either agenda, so I decided I had to do something for the host Shilling corner. I looked deep within myself, and I thought, what is Maya Gisborne missing in Strip Poker Night at the inventory? And I found the answer. I made some more butt poses.
Strong butt poses at that.
Fantastic.
These aren't merged yet. They will be by the time this episode goes up. But I thought, hey, she doesn't have any underwear butt poses, so I went ahead and did that. Basically, just stuff like this, so you can see how high it rides on either side.
Very nice.
That's what she works out in. It's my new headcanon. They didn't show us, and that's what I'm going with.
You're not the man who writes one line for 10,000 characters, but the man who writes 20,000 lines for one character.
I'm up to 26,000 and beyond, actually.
If they didn't show it, that means they didn't deconfirm it.
As far as I know, she actually just works out naked, because all you see is like her post-workout in a jacuzzi naked.
Is that how that works?
It's just cultural differences. I mean, I don't see her clothes or a towel anywhere.
That kind of makes sense. And it's more fun if you imagine it that way.
Occam's razor, taken directly to her crotch.
Yeah. All right. I'll kind of be brief for host Shilling stuff. Juno's.
I'm sorry, you don't get to talk on the host Shilling.
I don't get to host Shill anymore. Wow.
Of course not. You're not a host anymore.
I'm sorry, nmasp. You're no longer a host.
Wow. I don't
Remember your place.
God, I don't get the Secret Service protection anymore. This is wild.
nmasp. Ooh, that's another segue into unhinged political talk.
I'm trying my best for you, baby.
Nord, do you have anything to show on the host Shilling corner?
I've got one little thing to shill, and that's I expanded the selection of player tags you can tag yourself with. There's a new body type. You can tag yourself as a twink if you like. There's hairstyles, more tags in general added to the different categories, and you can tag yourself. It's called sexual dynamic. You can be sub, switch, or dom. And if people tag yourself that way, people can target it in future. So that should be fun.
You know, I think these labels, twink and sub and etc. are kind of things other people decide for you. People don't think it'd be like it is, but it do.
It lets you role play and immerse yourself.
Don't do that. This is not about your character. That's why you can't see them. It's about my character, Maya.
Disagree. Do it, but also be quiet and don't send any feedback reports of you role playing. Use your inside voice for that.
We also have a Masquerade talk here on the agenda. We'll kind of get into that because both of you have participated to some extent. But is there anything you'd like to say about how the Masquerade is going? We do have Masquerade characters to talk about in this episode and the next one. They're kind of drip feeding in at this point, but we do have new ones. Everything else is kind of stalled out, but we do have two. Either of you have any comments?
Yeah, I think on the touch a little bit on the live cast, I guess. It was really fun to kind of watch you guys go through that. Feel free to talk more, but it was really enjoyable listening to you guys. And also, I was surprised at the end. It's nmasp is coming on for episode 100, and I'm like, me? Wow. But also, I think the Masquerade is going okay. I think having been there for the previous ones, the first one was actually able to participate in as a creator. Really interesting stuff. I think there's always new ways to try things and new lessons to learn from them. But I enjoyed working with my team, and I think the content we've gotten out of it's been pretty good. Kind of unfortunate to see things for some teams not quite make it to fruition. But I do hope people continue to update their characters. I know Gene is getting a lot of updates to this day, and I do have high hopes for Heisenberg. And the others too, yes, guys. But those specifically come to mind.
I think it's think it's been relatively decent in terms of like teams that actually get the character into the game. Giving people the freedom to choose between rework or new character. Of course, most teams are going to choose new character. I've heard, I can see directly into all of the channels that Mulan's rework team is still hard at work with her, so she should be hopefully in the game not too long. Overall, though, we could have done with some more newcomers that maybe stuck around after it, but a couple have joined in, mostly with the writing. So we are getting some new talent into the game. We're getting new talent into the game in general still these days.
It's always nice to see. That's Mulan's another character nmasp had a hand in, by the way.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting because so I know Mulan's getting rework. Futaba recently got an art update, and actually Phonebox is doing some polish on Ochako as well, just to kind of get her to match up to where Momo is. So it's really interesting. So thanks, guys. Like, glad, the content's being improved.
I'm always in favor of, like, seeing folder reworks when it comes to much older characters. If you do pick a character, I think the goal should be see if you could, like, especially from, like, the ones from the first couple years of the game's development where they already, like, barely have any interactions or filters that would break if you completely overhaul them.
Oh, we'll get to that.
There's a lot of characters there that'd be perfectly, like, reworkable even. And yes, that does segue into one of our characters today.
But real quick, before we do that, I want to briefly mention as well, perhaps for the last time, show the annual character feedback poll where you can scroll through the entire online roster and give feedback, positive, negative, short, or long, to any of the over 200 characters currently there. A link will be in the description, but it'll stop being promoted in the game proper at the end of this month, September. So yeah, it's going to end up wrapping up pretty soon, and I really encourage people to go out there, especially like any devs who have really detailed thoughts and want to get it out there if they haven't done it yet, because responses are a bit lighter than previous years, which is a bit disappointing, especially because our actual play stats are higher in general. So maybe just a bad timing. I don't know if like the peak of summer is better. You don't get the swimsuit interest, but yeah. Have either of you filled it out already?
Yeah, I've hit up a couple characters. Not maybe all of them at this point. I think there's not much to say about certain ones, but yeah, I've kind of hit up the ones that I have thoughts about, either for improvement or praise. And yeah, it's really interesting reading through them.
I gave most of my responses early on because I didn't expect that the poll would be up this long.
It's
I honestly always forget how long it goes, so I usually do mine in the first couple of weeks. And since we've added a bunch of new characters, so I'm like, womp womp.
Have you said anything nice about May and Jura?
Of course, spnanon.
Yes, sir.
It's just buried in the pile of 50, 60 comments. I have the thing open right now.
Thank you.
It sustains you.
No, their images alone sustain me, but the rest is nice. So moving on, it's time we have 3 characters to talk about today, all testing roster. And let me tell you, between this episode and the next, we actually have a whole lineup of crowd pleasers. And by that, I mean they're all from fairly popular source material, and or they have giant fucking titties, which nmasp doesn't.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
But everybody else.
Yeah, it's actually wild. You brought me on the titty cast, which I'm like, that's an interesting choice.
nmasp, I know you were on the live cast, so I know you listened to Solitaire complain about me talking when someone else does. So please try not to interrupt.
Nah, I'm just here to be the dark reflection. And
please, until I can afford some headphones, please. You could just buy headphones for me.
I mean, I probably could. Just give me your address, and I'll just send them to you, and not a pipe bomb. I promise. I'll pack it with Maya fan art, so you have to dig through it.
So we have lots of crowd pleasers, lots of big fucking titties to talk about. And the first one, it's a bit of a Sonico case in that she's had quite the journey here. We mentioned characters getting same folder reworks where they're refurbished from a long time ago. You know, a very limited presence in the game long ago. You know, a few poses, few lines, basically, you know, crowdsourced dialogue. You wouldn't know because it's all equally shit. You can scroll down on the testing roster. You can see a little known character called Tifa Lockhart from Final Fantasy VII. You know, last updated, you know, a couple weeks ago or so. And then you look at when she was added, and it says added 3,000 days ago. Isn't that curious? Yeah, this was a pretty serious effort, pretty organized. They had like a special group chat and everything, which for some inexplicable reason was invited to, because the guy who wrote her, Mech Shield, a newcomer, just happened to like me. And I had a lot to say on the character. Despite, and I'm ashamed to admit this, I have not actually played Final Fantasy VII yet. I will at some point, eventually, I promise. The Gamer Police don't need to come knock down my door, but I just had a lot of general character development advice. But yeah, she's had quite the transformation. And you know, Nord was involved in this. The posing mostly. Metalitar did the model update. That changed hands a few times as well. Mech Shield was kind of... he didn't want to do it himself for whatever reason, but he believed in his writing mostly, so he kind of shopped around for different artists. And I think she came out pretty nice in this form as well. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of taking from all aspects, as I understand all source material. Mech Shield is quite the studied scholar of the character and all the many different sources she actually appears in. So it's not just like Final Fantasy VII, the original, or the remake or anything like that. Kind of drawing from all sources, which I definitely support in general. But yeah, she's got I think over 1,000 lines at this point. Maybe not, but he's definitely gunning for that. He's got big plans. He wants to make Cloud. He wants to like make the whole crew. And he's very devoted. He's not just like she's not like just his waifu. He also like cares about the actual like her proper portrayal, and even like the relationship she actually has with Cloud. And yeah, nmasp. So like, what did you think of this transformation? I don't know what materia she put in her gauntlets. The actually fucking good materia, but yeah, like you can see here in the old model, like
yeah,
this is about as basic as it gets. Just like a 2016 character. Everyone was just like, oh, we gotta add Tifa, and they certainly did add a character that had Tifa Lockhart on the select screen.
I came back. I kind of like started working on Juno right around when Tifa hit testing. Actually, I think she hit testing quite a bit before, but I never played Final Fantasy VII, so I only know Tifa kind of from...
We're over 3.
What?
We're over 3.
I know, but I think she's really cute. I think the obviously the rework is just night and day, like crazy good stuff, and I think it's a lot of really talented work that went into her, you know, from across the board. My one thing that I think for Tifa that's like really positive is I do think that she's been taken really seriously, which I think is a really positive sign, especially from a newer contributor, and that's really great. I think there's a lot of attention to detail in her personality. The one thing that I think is it's really hard to not praise her, because I think there's like everything here goes pretty well. So I think in terms of like critical feedback, that's sort of where my head is at, mostly from the standpoint of like, it's been a while since I saw her get an update, so I'm kind of not sure what improvements are being done. So if this is like, you know, by the time this comes out and by the time, you know, this was recorded, maybe things have changed. But I think on the dialogue front, she does a lot of these qualifying statements, like regardless of what stage she is in, and it's like really distracting, which is like, I guess, or I didn't realize it would feel this way, or like, I can't believe I'm doing this, and things like that. And it's like, it's a little repetitive. And I think like that verbiage can get, you know, not bad from the standpoint of like, it's not out of character, but it is just a little bit tiresome to see over and over again. And I'd say maybe reworking some of that content is good. There is some ambiguity on her level of confidence as well. I think there's a pretty smooth arc from like the beginning of the game where she's like kind of sporty and confident. And I don't know if this was on the cast earlier, but it's like, Aerith is supposed to be the more dominant one, and Tifa is not quite there. But it is kind of sometimes like it's easy to see her as confident in early stages and then definitely more embarrassed as we go on. And to me, it kind of does beg the question of like, you don't always have to justify why a character is here from like they need a reason, but more from the standpoint of like I couldn't suss out like, well, she's in a relationship with Cloud. She's trying to like do something, but that maybe never quite clicked for me when I was playing through with her. Maybe that's just like something that it's in her generics that got overwritten by playing with Vanessa. And then I think the last like critical piece of feedback would be, I think the art is extremely cute. I think her boob shine is a little much, but I can't tell if that's just a stylistic choice. Like I know this is like a Metallitar base model, I remember. So I think that's kind of the style that he does. But that's it really. I think the rest, she's really good. She's a really strong effort for a first character. I look forward to seeing how she develops, especially when we get more more of the Final Fantasy VII content that surrounds her. And my feedback as ever, and like Mech Shield, I've told you this a few times, just make sure she engages with the game holistically, and it's not just kind of based on other characters that aren't in the game yet. I think once they're there, you can lean more into it, but that's kind of my feedback for her. I think she's really good. Like I really enjoy her, and it's hard to single out like, oh, these are the particular things I think she does well, because she's just like holistically really strong, which makes those kind of little like bumps and bruises stand out a bit more. So that's my commentary on Tifa. But yeah, good job, Mech Shield. You did the right thing.
It's a bit weird. We didn't quite introduce Tifa, like who she actually is, because it's a bit weird to introduce her. It feels like everybody else. It's Tifa Lockhart from Final Fantasy VII. I once described her as the Michael Jackson of hentai.
That's such a weird statement, but so accurate.
If you go on, she made Thriller. Okay, if you go on Rule 34, any kind of like Boru, I don't know if she's quite the queen, but she might as well be. If she isn't, then the queen is like a pony, or like a Francine Smith, or some monarch that I don't recognize. Okay, this bitch is the queen.
Elizabeth, maybe. I think. Well, that's for like SFM stuff.
I'm quite happy with Tifa as our queen. But yeah, she's like a big titty childhood friend, a lot shyer than she looks. She's like a bartender. She joins her childhood friend to become an eco-terrorist, pretty based. And then she does martial arts for fun, and she can suplex a train and physical gods, and they eventually beat one up. I'm pretty sure that's how the plot goes.
Typical Final Fantasy plots,
And she currently has like a trio of the most like expensive fucking games ever made being released. She definitely has fresh content to draw from. Some of which Mech asks me to translate. She's also an Italian national treasure. Nord, as you begin your commentary on Tifa, I know for a fact that you have been learning Italian. Can you say big titty in Italian?
No.
No? Well, go ahead.
Well, it was what, January 2022 when
I think so.
She made a guest appearance at the Italian Senate.
Oh my god, that's great.
Is that a legacy?
According to Google, Tette Grandi. Tette Grandi.
Maybe that's got to be the episode title.
So, for context, Metallitar, thankfully, did the base model, did it for all the stages, has contributed a couple of drawn image attachments, in particular the gloves and her shirt when it's all folded up. I did all of the posing. I plan to commission Metallitar just to make his time worth it to really touch up some of her animations. I know you don't like them, spnanon, but I want him to take a shot at her finishing animation to make it a bit better. Mech Shield has been around since 2023, early 2023, and this is his first character. He's been, watching, learning from the successes and mistakes of other developers. And I think he took a very, very thorough and very cautious approach to writing Tifa, where he's like completely making sure that he gets every detail about her right. But he does ask me for advice a fair bit about the flow of banter in particular he's been getting into lately. And recently it's sort of clicked for him that it's better for Tifa to be able to loosen up and have fun than to be shy and reserved all the time. Particularly in targeted interactions where it's like, if someone makes a comment here, it's like a bit flirty, she'd maybe be, like in canon, she'd maybe be a bit like really reserved and taken aback. But given what game she's in right now, maybe it just is better for the experience for her to be shy but receptive to like flirty banter. And I think that's sort of a good attitude to take with these characters, is treat them, like, write them with respect, but don't treat them so seriously that you lose the point of why they're in SPNatI.
Versus like a visual novel kind of thing. Yeah, like I really agree with that. Was well said, Nord.
Yeah. Once that opens up, like, writing characters becomes so much easier, because you're like, oh, yeah, if I let this like shy and quiet character actually like flirt, suddenly they're having a lot of fun, and it's, you know, more fun to write them, and it's, you know, more fun to have them at the table. I learned that with Aqua, a Final Fantasy adjacent character.
Asuna is also kind of like that in a way. Like, I think Asuna and Tifa probably would have a lot to say to each other in terms of target interactions, and also like the way they're portrayed in SPNatI. So it'd be interesting to see kind of a little bit more of like comparison there.
I think those two sort of, I don't know if it's already in the game or not, but there was a suggestion of they can both bond over being adoptive mothers already.
That's crazy. Like, that's like, there's so much parody.
Yeah. I don't have any direct feedback for Mech Shield, no doubt, listening to this, because I give you my thoughts on her all the time anyway. But in general, from my like quick test game I did, I agree with a lot of what you said, nmasp.
What was your approach to like posing her? You know, as a model made by one person, and the writing would be made by another.
Mech Shield came up with, we had a shared Google Drive. You were in the group chat for this, spnanon, because we wanted your input, but
yes, I saw a lot of the decision-making process. It was very measured.
Yeah, we had a shared Google Drive folder, and Mech Shield uploaded reference images for the expressions, and then like taken directly from games or official art of Tifa, and then for poses it was either screenshots of Tifa or pictures of other characters doing similar poses. It was a lot of back and forth. He wasn't he wasn't overbearing and super demanding, but I would say Mech Shield is very particular about making sure, you know, every pose feels authentically Tifa. He has himself identified some art nitpicks, and other people have given art nitpicks as well. I plan to address that all at once she is sponsored. Because given that Tifa is like a very popular character, she's probably going to get a lot of like sponsorship feedback, and I want to make sure I have a clear direction of where I take her before I like commit to, you know, redoing every single one of her poses to change her eye shape, and then she gets a new sponsor that's like, oh, her jaw doesn't look right, you know, do it all again. But yeah, that's about all I have to say about Tifa. I'm very proud of how far Mech Shield has come with it, and I'm very grateful to Metallitar for giving us a, you know, banger model to work from.
Yeah, so like saying this is an improvement from the original is, I mean, that goes without saying, like, obviously. she's really just a whole new character who
She is Tifa
you
now.
decided like there was nothing worth keeping about the old one, so it just subsumed her folder.
She is Tifa now.
Right.
The old version had the old version had less than 300 lines and was possibly added to the game before targeted lines even existed. That's how outdated she was.
That's like 300 lines. It's like an afternoon of writing. Like, god damn.
So I saw a lot of the decision-making process, and I do think, Mech Shield does genuinely care about this character a lot. I think he seems to have made the right decision in pretty much every context. It's just, he probably needs to make a few more. At some point, he probably does need to start learning how to, like, pose her if he's that particular about it, Like, he's probably going to be on this a lot longer than you are, Nord or Metal is, for that matter. So
he's not that bad. I just mean that, like, he was very much like, I would do a pose and then he'd always have feedback for it to make it, 10 out of 10 in his eyes. He wasn't like overbearing. He wasn't working me to the bone for these poses or anything.
This is Nord abuse.
I'll say my piece now on her in general. Right. So, like, for example, she doesn't have a ton of lines yet, and I agree, like, there's not a whole lot to attach yourself to. It's the kind of thing where, we didn't share a lot of lore on her at the beginning, and neither does she. At the moment, she is just kind of assuming it's like, oh my god, it's Tifa Lockhart from Final Fantasy VII. Yes, I have played that game. So, yeah, you don't learn a lot, but he said, like, he's going to start moving into that. He just wanted to get, like, the basics. He wanted to get the feel of the character out there first, and not just put her on testing and not just sit behind the scenes forever. Get some active feedback, and I understand that. So I think he's approaching things in the right way. In terms of, like, other decision making, it was a bit contrived. Lord knows I know all about contrived stripping sequences, but to have her, despite being so shy, do the suspenders over nipples thing where she just, like, accidentally takes off her shirt and bra at the same time, so just so you could have that. Which, hey, why not? You should have a pose where she, like, snaps the suspenders onto her titties, though.
I think
that's my posing feedback for you.
I think she does. It just might be used in card swapping dialogue.
Yeah, I expected it in the actual sequence itself.
Or maybe it goes unused, actually.
Artistically, other stuff. I mean, as far as the model goes, like, I've always kind of criticized Metal Itar's models as, like, they're good, but he does have a very specific style that I think even comes out when someone else is posing it. Like, she doesn't look bad, but it's just like it feels very, very Metal, even beyond, like, feeling like Tifa at some point. But I know, like, especially for a modern 3D model, there are a ton of ways you could go about interpreting that into a 2D Kisuke model, and I don't envy trying to do so. So I'm not going to get on his case about that too much. I think she works perfectly well. This is a consequence of, so many cooks being in the kitchen, but, sometimes the pose doesn't always match up with the intensity of the line and vice versa. It's not easy when you have to go through so many different channels to slightly adjust a pose, and if you're just the writer, that's all you have to work with. So you kind of have to be economical with how you use a pose to convey certain things. Oh yeah, and speaking of the finishing forfeit or the finishing animation, you said, like, I was going to bitch about it. I'm not going to, because it's just more of a general sense. Like, hers wasn't bad or anything. It was pretty neat how she it ended with a loop of her breathing. It never just formally stopped. If I had to criticize the animation in, not just as a concept, but that one specifically, it would probably be just that it felt like her whole body was just kind of moving at the same speed the entire time. It didn't, like, ramp up in intensity. I did like the little pool of fluid she had in some of her post-forfeit poses. You can go ahead and look for that while I finish up. Couple last things to say about the writing, just to help him get more into, like, the nitty-gritty now, targets and filters. Obviously, you want to do more of those to practice her writing about more specific things. more specific contexts, talking about herself and relating things to herself. Targets will help a lot with that. Really start getting into that. I know he's busy in real life at the moment, but jumping into that content will help solidify her voice a lot. You can do something which I've noticed is a common problem for all the characters we'll be talking about today, which is that she should introduce herself. Introduce herself on a...
Yeah, that's actually really... Yeah.
Don't interrupt me, Master.
No.
Solitaire's going to be mad.
Good.
But yeah, I like introducing herself. It's always very good. It seems like a lost art. People don't do it very much, but on the first hand, it's very helpful. Use italics a lot, especially in the forfeit. Use dashes, use italics. There's a lot of lines that kind of came off stiff and weird, but italics would help a lot with that to give proper emphasis and let the reader know how it's supposed to come across. Aside from that, yeah. Is there anything you'd like to say, nmasp, about characters introducing themselves?
Yeah, no, I think that's the thing is like if you're not like a Final Fantasy VII kind of like expert, which is more people than it isn't, I do think a little bit more context. Like again, it's that like lore versus like not lore dumping thing, but I think there's room to work that into her targeted lines, for instance, like talking or filtered lines, like target someone with magic, be like, oh, magic works this way in our world, or like, hey, do you cast Fire 3 or do you cast Firiga, kind of thing.
Depends on how old your game is.
Yeah, I guess so.
And whether or not it's a remake. Well, any final thoughts on the very nice evolution, metamorphosis, you could say that Tifa Lockhart has gone through? Either of you?
No, I think we're good.
I was so happy to just entirely like erase from existence the original version of Tifa.
All right, well, let's say ciao to Tifa. And let's say ciao to Momo Yaoryorozu. I think that's how you say it. Going from one popular big-tittied icon to another. This is not a video game character. This is an anime character from My Hero Academia, or if you're a weeb, Boku no Hero Academia.
Boku no Pico Academia.
This is a Masquerade character. The fourth, I believe, we have to talk about on this podcast. She came a little bit later than the others, or is it the third? No, it's the fourth. Now she came a little bit later than the first three we talked about, but she's a what we say in the business is a big fucking deal. She's like one of the most popular, like in kind of fan servicey characters. I'm sure you can see why from her source material, but she's like I haven't seen this either, but I can kind of tell how a shonen goes. I'm gonna guess, she is a superhero, but like in a superhero high school where everybody has powers. She can apparently create things out of her skin, kind of like how quiet breathes through her skin. That's definitely the reason that she wears this tight, skin-revealing outfit that she has on. That's sort of her main deal, but she's like apparently very educated, very like high-cultured. She's like one of the rich elites. That's a famous Japanese trope that they love to do. They love jerking off about how like the elites are like so much better than everybody else. I can't imagine why that would be in the best interest of the government to promote. But that's her deal. So she's very committed to the whole like hero angle. She's well trained and she wants to do the most for everyone around her. And the most she can do, generally speaking, is to walk around showing off her big fucking titties. We'll probably get canceled for that because apparently she's like 15 or 16 or something. Okay, but I didn't make the manga. All right, it's not my responsibility. nmasp, what did you think of Momo Yaoryorozu, also known as Creati?
I watched My Hero Academia, like I think up to the point where the Paranormal Liberation Front or whatever comes into play, and I watched the anime first, then I read the manga, and then I kind of fell off after that. So it's really interesting to see Momo kind of come into the game. So starting from the top, I think she's really good. I really like her art is phenomenal. She's super well posed. She looks really good from the source, adapted a little bit to SPNatI. Really cute. Her dialogue is like the personality is there. I think she has a lot to say that's really interesting, and I think this is a good place to like have a superhero character that you can explore, and in many ways. And Momo is definitely there. I think the like areas for positive feedback are kind of without question. Like I think I would love to target Momo more and have more dialogue with her. My kind of areas for growth are, I think sometimes the poses that are used do not match up with the dialogue. And I noticed this a lot kind of like playing through. Part of this, I think, is because like she needs some more neutral / slightly positive thinking poses or commentary poses, because right now her emotions are either very flat or cartoony, which is fine, just maybe not all the time. And I think regarding the dialogue, I know this is a Masquerade character, so there's likely a lot of contributors, but it's not terribly consistent on like how she's behaving. I think the core of the character is there, and I think she's portrayed really interestingly. I do think she does a great job being attentive to SPNatI without being, overly, overly not horny or overly horny, except in some lines. But yeah, I'd just really like to see, kind of more of her and kind of smooth some of that out and see where we get after the fact. So I know it's like a lot in kind of a short period of time, but the TLDR's art's really good. Align the poses, maybe add some more neutral poses, and the dialogue I think could use a once over. I'd recommend maybe having a neutral party go through her, play the game, and then kind of mark lines that kind of whiplash really suddenly. And I think that's hard. It's really hard to align, many writers on one character, but I think she's a really strong start.
What is her like role in the story, would you say? Because like she's not the main character. Is she kind of like the girl that always jobs, or?
No, well, a little bit, but I think she's there to kind of be, sort of showing off the depth of quirks. Like the main character's quirk is kind of like before he gets multiple things later in the story, is like it's basically just like pure raw strength, and he's just kind of learning how to use that to like do other more creative tactical things. Versus like her quirk is pretty complex. It's like you can synthesize anything that's like non-organic, like or non-biological matter, but you have to know the chemistry, and it obviously consumes a lot of calories. So she is very fan servicey, but I think there's like cool concepts at play. It's just kind of like, that's like the one thing My Hero Academia does not do well is kind of give room for anything but the main character to shine, and that's sort of where she kind of gets screwed. So I think SPNatI is a really good place for her to talk about like she should be the main character, if that makes sense. And I think it would be cool to see more of that. So yeah, she kind of jobs.
As much as like, her source material is, I know she's kind of a phenom, maybe in the rule of in the world of Rule 34. I mean, do you think like this kind of gets across the character like pretty well?
Yeah, I think
what would be appealing about her?
I think so. Yeah.
Nord, what do you think?
It's very much a case where My Hero Academia it quickly introduces like an ensemble cast, introduces like an entire class,
and then does
full
nothing.
Of, it introduces like 20 other students aside from like the main 3 characters, and so they all get like 1 or 2 moments in the spotlight, but then they mostly just appear in group shots after that. And My Hero Academia, I think it sort of has a problem where it keeps on adding more and more characters up until the very end, so that problem only sort of gets worse. But Momo is stands out as like one of the more popular characters. I wonder why. As she is here, like, okay, she had 4 writers: Never Sajor, Lonely Phone Box, and Maximo Cossetti. Wait, so that's only 3. Oh, sorry. The other newcomer was Unknown, who was one of her 2 artists, along with Phone Box again. So I looked at her pose list after playing a game with her. I do think like all of her poses, or a majority of her poses, do lend towards those like hyper expressive extremes. And she could almost do with like, as you were saying, the masp, like more tame versions of them. And she has great writing, but she has great writing that's pulling her in 2 or 3 different directions.
Agreed.
So it's definitely a case of trying to, like, okay, now that she's in the game, now that you're getting this feedback, try and balance it all out and pull her, like, in one direction rather than multiple, because going in multiple directions just means that she feels inconsistent from line to line. But in a broader scope, I really like how she's coming along so far. The art and posing is really good, and conceptually the team made, like, great use of her quirk for the sake of, like, it's one of those things where, like, you could call it a gimmick. She uses her quirk to create things throughout the game in ways that sort of make sense for her. Like, she gives herself underwear when she takes off her leotard. That... Oh.
I thought that animation was really cool.
I bet you wish you could have just had Maya materialize her underwear out of nowhere and no one would question it.
Yeah, but because she has superpowers, I guess no one's gonna fucking bitch about it, right? Yeah.
Well, because it's superpowers.
That's just okay.
You know, it actually also helps that, like, the animation, animation, like, it starts, you know, already, like, finishing up. So from the player's point of view, there isn't any delay, right? You don't get to see the goods just yet. And then she has, you know, she makes a toy for herself for her forfeit, and I think that's really, really good. Because we don't have enough of them, and it was the kind of toy forfeit that doesn't conceal anything. So overall, with her dialogue, I'm looking forward to, like, bantering with her more. I think the team is sort of struggling to figure out who should be the one in charge of the banter, as it were. Although she does have quite a few targets already. I haven't checked in their channel in a hot minute. Overall, where she is now is, you know, pretty solid, and I think she'll go pretty far once the team settles on, like, the nuances of the character.
We should probably comment on the dire state of My Hero Academia representation in SPNatI. I mean, it started off awfully promising all the way back in 2018 when I imagine it was, like, kind of at the height of its popularity. nmasp, of all people, made
I know. Who could have expected I would make a character?
Ochako, the main girl, sort of, I guess, you know, the anti-gravity girl in, like, 2018. And, you know, everyone said, you know, this was going to herald a surge, a golden age of My Hero Academia representation. And, you know, Ochako was fine for the time, but you didn't really keep up with her. And she's aged quite a bit now. And then in the ensuing 6 years or so, what we got was Mei Hatsume, who never got off of testing, Toru Hagakure, the Invisible Girl. That was a whole joke. She was an April Fool's character. And finally, just in time for the manga to end and for everyone to complain about the ending, apparently, we got the most popular girl. Just in time for the series to completely fall out of public favor. Here she is. Talk about striking when the iron is cold.
I mean, it's okay. I've added another gravity-based character since. So, you know, I learned from the old days.
You learned. Everybody else didn't.
I think our resident tag master would have actually imploded if Momo's team had decided to give her folder the name Creati instead.
Yes, that's the other scandal, is that nmasp named the folder Uravity. But anyway, let me get into my thoughts on the character. So yeah, I don't really need to repeat the whole too many cooks situation. Like, yeah, that's the biggest criticism I had with the writing. It's just like, yeah, it feels like she's kind of all over the place. There's a lot of, like, really on the nose lines. She's kind of jumbled. She's like non sequiturs or mood swings. There's a definite side of her that's, like, more porny than the other side, where, like, I was taking off my shoes. It's like, I saw you staring, so I'm gonna get my tits out for you. You can stare at these. It's like, what? I thought this was supposed to be like a real prim and proper.
Bro, calm down.
Yeah, and then, like, later on, at the end of her forfeit, she starts like talking to herself about how she's like a horrible, shameless, vulgar woman. And it's like, what? Like, did she have a problem with doing this? Like, she did this herself. Was it under some kind of weird pretense? And then as it went on longer, she like started being like, oh, you know, maybe it wasn't that bad. And like she's having this mini arc at the end of her forfeit. Or like after, like when she's already finished. And like if the game doesn't even go on long enough, you won't even see that. So yeah, it just seems like all over the place in terms of like why is she here? What is her attitude towards the game? It'd be nice if she was kind of open about it. Hey, you know, I know everyone thinks I'm hot. I'm just going to get my tits out, but it's not like a big deal. You know, hopefully there's no cameras around. But like, I don't know what the deal is. I mean, she seems very devoted to the whole idea of like being a hero. And there's a little bit of that, like with the female chivalry, like of supporting, like being very supportive of like the girls, especially, which is fine. But like, I mean, it seemed pretty genuine, but I just wasn't sure exactly where she was going with it all the time. Sometimes she had like it's like a writing thing, like very amateurish, like overreaction to bad hands, where she goes into like the super like intense, like agonized fighting pose, like, oh, how am I supposed to handle this? How could this happen? It's like, you got dealt a bad hand in poker. Like, what is the big fucking deal? Again, that might also be a case of like there just wasn't a more mild negative pose to use, and that kind of influences the writing in that way.
Definitely. At least she doesn't have any lines that are like, insert villain here, dealt me this hand.
The classics.
There were too many lines.
Don't knock it till you try it. Or maybe you're the villain.
There were too many lines that were a bit like too long and rambly as well. Or like online. I know it's a more modern series, but she like used the word like I don't know if I want to kink shame you. It's like, I don't know, is that a word she would know?
I feel like that's probably something that would actually be like relevant, at least, you know, if we assume that, you know, this is an aged up character. That does feel like it's something that would exist.
Whatever.
But yeah, I get your point.
There's other like minor things, other amateurish stuff. She does the nipple pinch TM during while she's masturbating. I still don't like toys. I think toys suck. It doesn't block as much as it could have, but it still sucks. And limits the amount of like leg movement she can have. She shouted a name at the end. That's another classic, shouting name when they come, of what was it, Kyoka or something like that? I don't know who that is. Is that Jiro? Is that the headphone girl?
That is the headphone girl.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know what their deal is, if they're scissoring each other or what. If she manufactures some double dildos.
She can say that, or she can say Shoto, or she can say plus ultra.
I think the Shoto thing is really funny. If you've watched My Hero, because that's like what Shoto's dad is just like during like the first little mini tournament arc is just like Shoto, and I like cannot get that out of my head. It's just like...
there's definitely a lot of ship tease going on with character that isn't here, right?
Yeah, that has limited potential. But
I mean, this is me like self-shilling in some ways, and I don't claim to be like the end all to be all on this, but it's like I think you could do some interesting stuff with like Marinette and Adrian on that front, where it's just like, why settle for one, you know, of these two when you could just do both, kind of thing.
Perhaps you should give that advice to Tifa's writer as well.
I think I've tried to. I think Mech Shield is more insistent on that. I think there's more voices involved with. Yeah.
He won't take that advice, but you can. You are the champion.
It's okay. It's like, hey, everyone's got different flavors of things they want to do.
Okay, last things I want to say. Momo, her finished stage, it'd be nice if it looked a little different from the naked one. That's a common point of criticism I have for a lot of characters. And the big one, if you're going to change anything about the art, I mean, just look at this GIF I posted. That ponytail has got to flip. I don't know how much hairspray she put in that thing. I don't know how much she generated from her cleavage, but I don't think that moved an inch the entire game. And it should at least flip around with her head, okay? I don't think all of her... It looks like her bangs or whatever don't flip with her head, but that ponytail, at least, you know, give it a little dynamism. I don't think it changed at all the entire time. It was just pointing to the right. And it's like, come on now. I don't understand how people don't realize this. It's very obvious if you just look at any source material. Any final thoughts on the Everything Hero, Creati, Momo. We've gone this long. We haven't made one joke about that one trend of like the weird looking doll that's also named Momo with the beak.
Wait,
mouth.
what? Oh, yeah. To be fair, is there a joke to be made?
That was it. Do you have any final thoughts on Momo?
No, I'm good. I think we said everything that needs to be said.
I do remember that like one of her most broken lines of dialogue was the one where she generates the nesting dolls and she played it for like every single like opponent lost line. But that was fixed long ago.
Yeah, she had some repeating filter lines. All right, well, we've had two pop cultural mainstays, right? We got Tifa Lockhart, the classic, the veteran, right? She's got the legacy, and we got the newcomer, the hotness, Momo Yaoryorozu, right? They're both doing some amazing stuff in the world of Rule 34 and pop culture. And then we have we have a character who I'm still not sure if she's actually in the fucking game that she says that it says she's from, or if she's only been announced. We have a character who was possibly designed specifically in a lab to appeal to nmasp in every way possible. Juno, also known as Taemin, from Overwatch 2, also known as Overwatch, on the character select screen because nmasp refuses to acknowledge Overwatch 2's existence.
I think, like, I don't know, I just think Overwatch 2 is a meme game. Overwatch in general is a dead game, but I really enjoyed playing Overwatch 1. I think Overwatch made some missteps, but I don't know. I think it was a fun game. I hope it comes back. I enjoyed playing Juno when she was on the testing environment.
I'll let you say your piece in a minute here, but just to introduce her a bit more, I really think this is just like, if you can just imagine, the nmasp's famous touchstone method of like things the character likes, things the character is about. If you made one of those for nmasp, right? Petite, small Asian
for
woman.
me as a person,
petite, small Asian woman with something of a personality disorder in a weird environment who talks very like politely and a bit strangely and has the potential for very weird, offbeat, off-center poses, also known as interpretive dance, as we like to say. And she's very awkward and always spilling her spaghetti. And it is also from Overwatch. You would get Juno, who's like a Martian, or she's from a Mars colony. Now finally you understand my pain of having to establish that, yes, she's a human. She's from an Earth colony on another planet.
She is Martian. Yeah, she is Martian. It's canon.
But yeah, she introduces herself as Martian. And again, also on the nmasp touchstone, writing a character before not only have you played them in the game, but the game itself came out. Because, why not just write Say, for example, having not played the fucking game? Other various examples, just go by feel. Just vomit out like 800 lines in a day and just based on vibes. And not only do that, but actually have it come out perfectly fine, which is probably, you're the only one who might be able to get away with that. And boy, do you make use of it.
It's a useful skill. No, but I think with Nord, I'll let you kind of dive into, but
you can go first if you want to explain, like, why this character and what tickled you about her.
I think so a couple of kind of common misconceptions I think about Juno is that, like, oh, you wrote this character without knowing anything that she was about. It's like, okay, guys, first of all, Overwatch is not that deep. Second of all, I did all of her art first, actually, and then I started to write her once more of her like collateral had been out, of which there's like Overwatch the game, her trailer, a introduction to season 12 of Overwatch 2, a comic book, and then like a short like animation. So like, trust me, like I did the research and I just did her posing and model first. But as far as like why, I just think she's really cute. I've kind of like always been a fan of this like 50s sci-fi kind of whatever style, like Americana style, and there's a lot of that inherent in her design. Like, she's supposed to be like kind of a throwback to space age stuff. Like, she has the really big helmet, the jet boots, all that kind of stuff, and I thought that was really interesting. She's really cute. Listening to her kind of like talk and engage, like, very, very cool stuff. Her voice actress is Xanthia, who's done Haru and then Mariana from Fire Emblem. I really like her way of communication. So I basically just kind of like, it was a perfect storm of like different things going on. And I'm like, you know what? I can do this. Like, this is going to be fun. And so I booted up Kisake for the first time, kind of learned how to use ribbons, and did all that, got her posed, and went from there. But yeah, I mean, it's like, this is like weaponized nmasp bait. It's there's everything about this character like appeals to me personally. And, you know, she's fun to write. I think like it's really interesting having someone who's curious, and she's like, she's definitely anxious, but she's not like a complete like, you know, Sucrose goes really hard on spaghetti, for instance, and she's got some spaghetti, but it's not, you know, entirely spaghetti. So anyway, yeah, no, I think that's why I picked her. I thought it was just gonna be fun and a little interesting, and I wanted to get better at Kisake for various reasons. So there she is.
Nord, what did you think?
I liked her a lot. It was very much a surprise addition to the game for her to just roll up one day. A lot of my early criticisms of her, like there were some areas that needed rounded out, I think you've started addressing already.
Like what?
I don't think I would explain it. There's a lot of like her like way of speaking very much didn't match like the voice I sort of got in my head watching the trailer. I feel like it's possibly like your newer lines have felt more to like what I would expect from her. My main critique is that like she makes a lot of references to what I think are songs or novels that sort of go over my head. This could just be a result of me being an uncultured swine, though.
Yeah, for her minor removing lines, that case is terrible to write. So I basically, she's a fan of like old westerns because that's what she kind of grew up on, and I kind of like leaned into that a little bit, or you know, kind of older sci-fi novels and so forth.
Oh, okay. Okay, makes more sense now. Is that a canon thing about her?
Yeah, it's canon.
Okay. You did not. I can't believe you would come on here and lie about this being your first ever time using Kisake, right?
No, I mean, I think I did. It's just been a long time. I think the last time I probably posed a character might have been like Marinette version 2 before Phonebox saved me from myself. So yeah, I mean, I don't think I've built a model from scratch since like Marinette 1.0.
You redid her art recently, didn't you? Especially for her face.
Yeah, I got some good feedback on that, and I think I pushed her to sponsorship very aggressively because I was just not getting feedback, and I wanted to make sure that I, you know, had a long window to improve her. But yeah, I redid her face, I adjusted her body proportions a little bit, tweaked some of the ribbons on her, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I'd love to hear more about the dialogue piece because I definitely want to improve that, and I don't want it to be like, oh, I just kind of mass produced these lines in a lab without giving it much thought, because I did. It's just kind of a question of like, how do we kind of dial that back and ground it? Again, there's just not a lot of like dialogue for her because of the game she's in. And I also just fixed that. I literally just pushed the merge to fix that issue.
Yeah, I spotted something looking at her portrait just now.
So yeah.
It's sort of hard for me to say what I was expecting from her voice. A lot of Overwatch characters are really just vibes, and all I had seen was like her trailer and her like comic book animatic. I haven't listened to all of her unlockable quotes or anything. But I feel like after her initial testing launch, her voice has definitely felt more consistent. Like I would have to like really comb through the lines to be able to say this is what, you know, felt a bit off. Maybe I'll do a sponsorship run for her or something like it.
Yeah, I'm really open to feedback on that front, and I think like the energy that I go for with Juno compared to say like Sucrose or Marinette is like Marinette is confident, she's just crazy and trips over herself, versus Sucrose is like definitely a little bit more reserved. I think with Juno it's like homeschooled energy is the way I'd put it, where it's like she's not naive and she's pretty smart, but she's also just like not sure how to do things, so she can come across as like a little too forward. in the context of SPNatI, which was what I was trying to go for. So I am open to, dialing it back. It's also like the master syndrome of like, I just write lines that are too long sometimes. So I'm really happy to polish where I can.
I mean, it does make sense because her backstory is she was like the first child on Mars and grew up around scientists and was sent to Earth in an emergency situation. So naturally, she's gonna stumble over social situations. I always think maybe you could lean more into the angle of like she's not only like not really that she's shy about some social situations, but she literally does not know the etiquette at play. So like maybe if she like tries flirting with someone and they give a very coy response, maybe she's just like, oh, that didn't work, rather than picking up that there's a game being played there.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an angle I want to approach from, but it's kind of SPNatI where people are just generally like, oh yeah, no, character's flirting with me, I'm going to be receptive, so it's hard to stumble into those. I do try and have her be like a little awkward or misinterpret things. She actually does this with Jura, which I think is a fun way of showing that one off. But good feedback. What about you, Span? Anything, or Nord, anything else on that?
I do have to say I really love her art. Like, she is...
Thank you.
Really cute, really sexy, really good job done overall.
And the dialogue generally works, I'm hopeful.
The dialogue totally works. It's just like... It's the sort of thing that I could nitpick to the end of time if I wanted to. But overall, her vibes are currently really good.
Well, nmasp is the master of vibe writing, I would say. And yeah, like overall, like he's a master of his craft, right? You get her deal immediately. You get what she's about. I know, it's sort of the whole point of like an Overwatch character design is you're supposed to get it immediately, and they're not that complicated as he said. And yeah, like she's rambly, she's punny, she's dropping her spaghetti. She has all these references, but like the lore in general, I thought was like sprinkled in really well. It's not always just like boilerplate lines on stripping poses where she's just like really dryly explaining it. It comes out in many different situations, like even when it's like other people's turns, in like a way that feels pretty natural, relating things back to herself. So I don't have a problem with any of that. If anything, like I have very little to criticize about the dialogue, except for just like some repetitiveness, like when every line is very rambly or every line is like a joke that she tells. They can kind of bleed into each other, and you got to start doing what I've been saying for a while now, is to write just like some simpler filler lines to fill the space in between.
Yeah, I definitely think I could go back and probably split some of the lines. And I think I'll probably do that, at some point.
I also think it's very admirable for you to, after all this time, not only just write, in your comfort zone, but also jump back into the art side of things, which you're very out of practice for. And I think it came out pretty nice overall, especially like, it looks very recognizably her, especially on like what's not a super easy outfit to make in Kisuke. I will say, like, her face doesn't really look bad in a vacuum, but it's not especially working for me. Like, I think it... Again, it's not easy to adapt a 3D model, but I think it really pales in comparison to the Pixar look of the source material. And I don't know if you want to like really lean into that, or if you're willing to swallow your pride and maybe get help from somebody else. But like it's such an appealing part of her source material.
Yeah,
design. You could really nail it. Like that's so important to get that Pixar look. And right now, like, she looks a little bit...
It's still very Kisuke.
A little too hard, like nmasp coated. Her eyes are like really slanted, and you are not beating the allegations.
Well, no, I think it's like I literally measured the angle and like the distances on her face, like when I redid the face. So that's just kind of how she actually looks. I think the disadvantages and this is not an excuse, it's just kind of my observation that like it's hard to get some of the shadows and angles quite right. But yeah, no, I mean, if someone else wants to help out with her face, I just redid her pose matrix, so that should be not super hard to do. But, I think that's kind of as far as I want to take it at this very moment.
Yeah, you're within your rights to do that. And you know what? As far as measuring angles go, ever the scientist, aren't you? But this is art, not science.
I think Nord got to watch me kind of make sure that like I was like readjusting the face, and I was using like ribbons to like approximate angles.
Again, it's not like bad in a vacuum, pun intended. Except for like some of the like more out there poses, like sometimes her mouth can be a little too low, but it's like it's not like horrible.
It's passable, probably.
Good enough. You're very much of that school of thought.
I'm like, hey, does it work? Pretty well. Okay, there's like other ways to make it. But yeah, I think like because this is just all my own art, I am very receptive to like giving it a little bit more polish. It's just kind of like, you can do the face to death kind of thing, and I just am not going to do like customize and all the face ribbon stuff. I'm just not going to do that. Sorry.
I think you've done a good job adapting the style. Like, I think going for the, as you've called it, spnanon Pixar-esque style would be a bit much. Just looking at it now and hearing what spnanon said, I think the one thing I could critique about the model is the eye, like the inner eye slant, and that's because, like, looking at the reference GIF that was posted in our chat, her eyes don't really close that way, and what I found with a lot of my newer models and posing them is oftentimes to get the right facial expression when their eyes are partially closed, I will actually change the eye shape using, like, when you can put that into the pose code itself and it behaves, which is a plus. But for some of her poses in particular, it's very noticeable and it doesn't quite look Source accurate. So it's just something to consider to make those like eyes half shut facial expressions look better.
I'd love to get some help on that, but like that sounds doable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, but thanks, guys.
That's really all I would critique. As I said, it's a great adaptation of the Source art style.
Also,
her eyes in Source are a bit more like angular. They're a little bit more like, is rhombozoid? Is that a word?
It's like the like 4-sided thing. That's like, yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
Is there something else you'd like to say, nmasp?
Yeah, no. I think it was really interesting on her feedback poll. I think there was one very long comment that I think was actually really helpful about like redoing her face, and I kind of pushed for that. There's a lot of unhelpful commentary on there that I was a little bit like, okay, who's being mean girls? It's very cute of you. But I think there's a very long comment that had like the really helpful piece around like redoing her face, which I think it's better. I'm gonna take Nord's advice into play and Spanon's into play to like kind of continue like improving it. I'm very happy to do that. But like the speed at which this character was added to the game is so much that it rolls over from impressive to earnestly concerning. Aside from what else her developer was supposedly also working on during the 3 weeks, it was just really, it's just like, I'm sorry, guys. It's actually not that hard to write things that are relevant to characters with very minimal lore. Like, sorry.
It's not that hard to write characters that you can get everything about them from a wiki from.
They're throwing some shade about his Masquerade project, and
I got like Constance out like not long after, so I got her dialogue finished, but it's like, okay, guys, like calm down.
Hey, remember, nmasp has a real job. Like, he's actually capable of being productive and not just like sad boying in Discord all day.
Well said.
Unlike some people, it is possible to write 2 characters.
As a closing thought for this episode, I want to say that like I've just realized the 3 characters we've talked about today sort of are all on different parts of the spectrum of like lore heavy to lore light. Like Tifa is a character that you need to have at least played the games, but make sure it's gone further and like read novels and watched, the movie. Maybe movies plural. Not sure. I know there's Advent Children. Momo is sort of like, she's from a very like story-driven experience or story-driven source material. But she's a like minor character most of the time, but there's solid stuff to work off there. And then Juno is a character from a hero shooter that's never going to advance its plot, realistically speaking. So you can get everything off of like the trailers and wiki and in-game quotes, and that's about it. So 3 different ways to look at a character from most lore heavy to least lore heavy.
On my note, I said nice sprinkling of lore, parentheses, if not made up.
I really had
I don't know how much was made up. She seems like a big blank canvas, which
I really had to polish the shit out of some of that, but it's like I did play her while she was on test. I have kept up with her like dialogue updates, but see Senator Armstrong quote for detail work.
Consider maybe not having her float on the character select screen, because that might make people think she's taller than she is, and you don't want to sell the petite thing.
Okay, got it.
The helmet hair was funny. If you want to redo some of the stripping poses, she currently does the thing where she just reaches for her clothes and they disappear. So if you want to put some time into drawing them like half off or whatever,
that's like an area where I want to do it. Then I had to redo her face, so it's coming. It's also like I could also use help on that, to be honest.
A couple of her poses were off center, which, I mean, she literally floats around, so that makes sense. But like at least like try to move the arrow, the speech bubble arrow, above her head. That'll help.
Okay.
Other than that, I thought like her general dialogue was pretty good. There wasn't much to criticize. Just maybe try to fill it out, so she's not like constantly telling jokes or whatever. But what you have there is pretty good.
Yeah, I think I can always add some more like simple. Would love to get some additional insight on like which poses to change the eyes on. I'm like not good at this. I don't claim to be. I'm happy with it, but I do want to make it better. Also, yeah, Nord, seriously, I'd love to get some feedback on the eye pieces. I didn't realize you could actually change the eye shape during a pose. Like learning the editor has been kind of a bitch, because like I put all of her ribbons on her poses the first time I did it, which means like it was really difficult to update. The new Matrix actually has them corrected, but it was like, shit, I gotta redo all of these to redo her face. Should work now, though.
It's something I unfortunately had to learn when doing Aqua Konosuba.
Oh god, I'm so sorry. I can already tell.
Remember how I got nitpicked to death? Well, at some point, it literally became a game of, like, getting contradictory advice or being told, like, the eye shape changes completely when she's angry. And so I had to, like, try it and see that it worked at like literally changing the shape of the eye to have a flat top instead of a curved top for whenever Aqua Konosuba gets angry.
I don't think I was around during her development. Maybe I was, but that was maybe some time ago.
Okay, so this is part of why I'm waiting with Tifa until she's fully sponsored and has all the art feedback she's gonna get, so that I can then action on it. The worst part of developing for SPNatI, by far for me, is getting Kisuke feedback, where it's a popular character, a dozen different people want to give, small steps at a time type feedback. Because what that means is I need to have Kisuke open on one model for hours. I need to wait for the other person to respond to every change I do to make sure it's what they actually want from it.
I totally get that.
Like, all the while, it's like, because you can't have more than one copy of Kisuke open, I can't just work on a different model. It just sucks the life out of me getting nitpicky feedback one step at a time, so literally all I do these days is focus on the end result, even if I have to, like... Okay, so, like, with Yusei and with potential franchise mate Akiza, I literally just hand drew their hair, so it's like, yep, it's source accurate. Literally just tracing, like, official sprites for it.
That's great. I think for me, it's like I think like I need specific feedback because I don't do art very often. So like going by feel doesn't actually function for me. Yeah. So it's like I think getting the feedback of like these are things you need to change on her face really helpful. And I am historically kind of like I think there's certain types of feedback that I don't jive really well with, but generally speaking, like I do care and I do try and factor those things in. So I think especially when it comes to art, because it's like definitely not my expertise, versus with writing, I'm a little bit more comfortable saying like, it's okay. But with Juno, definitely want to make her great.
I think that's going to do it for episode 99.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks very much for returning, nmasp, and we'll have you back for episode 100 as well. And thanks as usual, Nord. So Normally, I would ask for some final comments, but you kind of gave them already, and this has gone on long enough, so fuck you. You don't get to talk.
Thanks. Ball so hard, motherfuckers want to try me. Welcome back to episode 100. Or is this 99? I don't know.
This is 99. Also, we haven't started yet because I need to send
Motherfucker.
The web link. You're out of practice, I see. That's going to be the stinger.